Now, we've been focusing on the war in Ukraine this week, and today the Russian president made his most hawkish comments yet about the conflict. Vladimir Putin said the West would be fighting with Russia if it allowed Ukraine to strike Russian territory with Western-made long-range missiles.
Речь идет о том, чтобы принять решение о том, что
if this decision is taken, it will mean nothing less than the direct involvement of NATO countries, the United States and European countries in the war in Ukraine. This will be their direct participation, and this, of course, will significantly change the very essence, the very nature of the conflict. This will mean that NATO countries, the US and European countries are at war with Russia. And if this is so, meaning the essence of the conflict changed, we will take the respective decisions corresponding to the threat we are facing.
Well, he made those comments as Prime Minister Keir Starmer flew to Washington to discuss the issue with the US presidents. Our Moscow correspondent Ivor Bennett is in the Russian capital tonight. Good to see you, Ivor. Is this very significant, or is it all rhetoric?
That's always the question, isn't it, with Vladimir Putin? I think it's certainly fair to say that these are his most hawkish comments to date on this topic, and that's really saying something, because whenever he brings it up, it provokes a very angry response indeed. It's not just his words that are angry, but also his expressions, his mannerisms. It really feels like it's personal to him, and a red line if the West does give Ukraine this permission to use long-range missiles deeper inside Russia, which is why I think this is actually more than just rhetoric. The key line tonight was that the West would be in a direct fight with Russia if they give this green light to Kyiv. And his reasoning is that it wouldn't just be the weapons and permission the West would be supplying to Ukraine, it would also be the satellite communications to identify targets. It would be the operational aspect around the weapons. That's his claim, and hence why he says that NATO would be actively participating in any long-range strikes. And if that happens, he said that Russia would be forced to take appropriate decisions. He didn't spell out, however, what those would be.
President Biden and Sir Keir Starmer meeting in the next few hours. What do you think the response from them and indeed the West will be?
Well, they're going to be watching this very, very closely, of course, and discussing it tomorrow. I think they knew there would be an angry response, for sure, from Vladimir Putin. I think that's why they've kind of held back until now and not taken the plunge and given permission. They've been waiting to see what Vladimir Putin would say and weighing things up. How we've got to this point is because, according to the US and the UK, the equation has changed on the battlefield. They claim that Iran has supplied Russia with ballistic missiles to use on the battlefield. They've called it a dramatic escalation, which is why they're considering a response. And I think it's just worth reminding our viewers what US Secretary of State Antony Blinken told this programme earlier this week.
It's not simply saying, oh, should they have this weapon system or that weapon system? There are a lot of things that go into it. Do they know how to use it? And some of these sophisticated systems take training, and that's one of the other things we've done. Can they maintain it? Because if you give them something that falls apart in 7 days because it can't be maintained, that doesn't do a lot of good. And then, is it part of a coherent strategy to achieve a very clear objective? All of those things have to go into these decisions, but what I can tell you is we've adapted and adjusted every step along the way. We'll continue to do that.
So not ruling out at this stage?
We never rule out, but when we rule in, we want to make sure it's done in such a way that it can advance what the Ukrainians are trying to achieve.
So will the West risk Russia's wrath? I think tomorrow Joe Biden, Keir Starmer will be weighing up what Russia's response will be, what those appropriate decisions will be. Will Vladimir Putin follow through on that previous threat he's made about arming the West's enemies to strike Western targets abroad? Will he follow through on any of those numerous nuclear threats? The bottom line is things are very delicately poised indeed.